All right, welcome to another podcast. We're super excited to be here today. We got our buddy Lucas White with us. That's exciting, right?
Yeah, that is exciting.
So last week's podcast, I have had a few people tell me they thought it was really good.
Really long?
And it was really long.
I don't know. I'm just making stuff up.
Oh, okay. But we got to talk about sin relief and all the things that we kind of get to do with them. And then obviously you put the video in there with the church service.
Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty...
that was really fun.
That was really good. So we kind of got lucky today. We had a meeting with the Ministerial Alliance meeting with Fairview. And I gotta be honest, I was blown away by how many pastors came.
Yeah, I didn't know there was that many pastors in Fairview, no offense.
Right.
I honestly thought it was going to be like 5 people, and it ended up being like 10.
Yeah, it was great.
I mean, I don't know if that's accurate. Maybe it was a little less than 10, but...
It was good. It was a good turnout. They came over to Enid, and we're talking about a new partnership with them on this food packing ministry that we're going to start. And really the goal is kind of like our grill walks is to package the food with the churches in Fairview. Then we're going to take the food back over to Fairview, go door to door, hand out the grocery sacks, and in the process of that, obviously share the gospel, pray for people. And one of the things I think that the churches were pretty interested in, and we talked about even how to like start setting up positions from every church that the congregation within every church, everyone would have something to do. So whether that was the package team, the delivery team, the gospel team, the prayer team, the follow-up team, like trying to find a place for everyone in the body to be serving. And I felt like they really received it good. And so I called Lucas because he's from Longdale, Oklahoma. If you look that up, it's a very tiny town out western Oklahoma. I've known Lucas for, I don't even know. How many years has it been? 4, 5, probably?
7.
Somewhere between 4 and 7. Okay, we'll go with that. Between 4 and 7 years. And I called him and said, hey, the Ministerial Alliances meeting's coming. And I mentioned Swadley's barbecue. And he says, I'll be there. I mean, it was pretty easy. I mean,
know how to get preachers to show up.
Yeah, right. So we had a good lunch, and we talked him into staying afterwards and doing part of the podcast. So I'm excited that he's here.
Yeah.
So Lucas, I think I first met you when we were doing the grill. We were doing the walk out in western Oklahoma. And I met you actually at, I think, a Ministerial Alliance meetings where I met you.
Yeah.
And we were talking about coming through Longdale, Canton area and doing the grill walks, door to door, and inviting people back to a carnival type thing. And really after that we became really good friends, and we helped some stuff with your church and some house stuff that was going on out there. But Lucas is now on the Forgotten Ministries board, which is cool. I'm glad he's part of that.
Finally, there's someone who knows what they're doing.
So why don't you just tell us about like how you got to where you're at, pastor, like your story growing up. I know Dad was a pastor, all that stuff. Why don't you kind of fill us in with some of that stuff?
Well, my grandpa was a Baptist preacher here in Oklahoma, several little towns around. And then my dad also was a pastor. And then I surrendered to the ministry in 1999 at Falls Creek. And my wife, I hadn't married her yet. We got married that November, 99. And she was at Falls Creek as well. And so I took her to the side and told her I felt like the Lord's called me to ministry. And she said that, she'd already felt that call in her life years ago. And that Lord's leading her that way too. So we surrendered to the ministry together and got married in November of 99. And then we just started serving in our little local church. And I supply preached here and there, sought some education, but never did end up getting to go completely through with that. And then I just was working and living and serving at the church, youth pastor, Sunday school director, lawnmower,
right,
handyman, whatever, wherever the Lord needed me. And it was a small church that we kind of went through pastors every couple of years. And we had one pastor for 6 years. And I ended up on the board several different times, on the board, on the Pulpit Search Committee. And the last time was 2012. We had a Pulpit Search Committee, and we was looking, and I was chairman of the committee, and I just felt the Lord tell me, how long are you going to do this before
right.
you know, you be faithful to your commitment. You
Yeah,
know?
step up to the plate,
Step
man.
up to the plate. So I showed up to the next board meeting and resigned as chairman and left my application and told them that I live a half mile from the church. So if you don't choose me as your pastor, I'll be back the next Sunday. But I have to do this.
Right.
And 2 months later, they called me to be their pastor, and I've been pastor at Longdale ever since. So,
When did you start that? What year was that? When you?
2012, June 2012. Been 12
Okay.
years ago.
Oh my goodness.
So one of the things, so when we talk about rural towns, I mean, obviously there's a whole lot of rural town churches, rural towns out there. I would say Longdale's pretty I think it's major rural town. So
Yeah, it's pretty rural.
Yeah. So
About
tell us,
160 people in the town.
yeah, 160 people. Kind of maybe explain the town and what it looks like. Like, I know, Canton's close, lakes. What kind of explain that a little bit.
The town, I mean, it's just a little bitty spot. It's got a convenience store. I mean, it has the normal. It's got a lot of elderly people in it, but at the same time, it's got a lot of young folks that they all go to school over at Canton.
Right.
And but it's not much to really speak of. I mean,
Right.
It's got a Longdale Speedway.
Yeah, that's
we
true.
got that
That
big
is
thing
true.
going. Jesse Hoskins put that in. So
Right.
Uh,
I forgot about that.
yeah, that's our big claim to fame now.
Right.
And you can't really keep pictures on your wall at night whenever they're running. But
Right.
Other than that, it's pretty cool.
So you definitely have something probably different than maybe some pastors out there. Why don't you tell us about your family that you got?
I am a father of 12 children.
Yeah.
And they're all like his. They're all
Yeah, I have 9 boys, 3 girls, and me and my wife, we started having kids in 2000, and
haven't stopped.
we haven't stopped.
Wow.
2023 was our last baby, so
So pray for his wife, Jennifer.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable how she's been able to do that. I mean, and she does great. I mean, it's awesome. But now they're all old enough where it's nice that the older ones can
can help out.
help out and help take
Or
care.
cause more problems.
Or yeah, that's true. That's true. You got those guys too. I mean, boys are ornery, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're definitely ornery. So when we first met, we talked about obviously doing the grill walk, all those different things, and one of the things I will just compliment on in Lucas's church, they're very mission minded. And we're going to talk
Yeah.
about the mission trip you just got back from here in a little bit. But I mean, very mission minded. So it was like it just naturally came together. It wasn't like we were speaking a foreign language when we started talking to you guys. You guys were very much thinking about missions. You're living on missions. You guys do your big tent revival where you're bringing people in. But what about the grill walk? Was that different? Like how have you seen that? Because you've been on quite a few of them. How have you seen that help maybe your church see your community different, or how do you see that? Just kind of speak about that a little bit.
Well, the girl walk, we were always looking for ways to get into the community as far as, get in touch with people, you know, and, I remember back in the day, I mean, I've been in church my whole life, going door to door was kind of normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just talking to one of the pastors earlier that somewhere 20 years ago or so, or 15, everybody decided that door to door don't work.
Right.
And so, and it's kind of like our big tent revival that we do. Everybody said, well, that won't work, and it does.
It does,
I mean, because it's not about necessarily what you're doing, it's about what you're bringing, you know. And so whenever we have the big tent revival, we focus on Jesus Christ. When we have the girl walk, we're still focusing on Jesus Christ.
Right.
If we're roofing a house in town that needs roofed, we're focusing on Jesus Christ. And when you're doing that, it's beneficial. So the girl walk was good just to be an icebreaker, for people that, kind of that dry start of knocking on somebody's door. We had done things where we went around the community and knocked on the door when I first started pastoring, just asking, if you got any prayer requests. And praying with them on the spot, but also committing to pray for them, whatever their needs are. And if that turned into a gospel encounter, then we did that. And some people didn't want to talk to us and didn't want us to say anything. But we went ahead and pursued that anyways, because I couldn't imagine that it wouldn't work to go to somebody's house and talk to them.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we do live in a little different culture than we used to, so it may be more difficult now than it used to be. In today's society, you're interrupting somebody's TV show, for goodness sakes. But,
Right.
At least these days they can put pause,
Right.
so
Right.
keep on
Right.
watching whenever you're done. But everybody has to eat.
Right.
So you go and knock on somebody's door and you got some hamburgers or hot dogs. It's a great icebreaker.
Right.
People want to know why. Why are you doing this?
Absolutely.
And you can just go straight into, well, we're doing it because, we're trying to give back to what God has given to us.
Right.
And we want to share that love with you that he shared with us, Or you could take it 500 different directions if you want. But
Yeah, absolutely.
as Charles Spurgeon says, he starts anywhere in the scripture in a sermon and makes a beeline for the cross.
Right.
So whenever you start that conversation, whichever direction you approach, you're trying to take that person to Christ. And so it's just a great opportunity to do that. And the community receives it well.
Right.
Because, I've had people ask me, why are you going on a mission trip to Africa and you're not doing anything for those people? Because I tell them, they say, what are you doing? Well, we're going over there to teach Jesus Christ to them. And they're like, well, that's not enough.
Right.
Well, it is enough.
Yeah.
But in our culture, if you come with a gift first, it's going to be like, well, okay, so you're helping them with their needs, physically,
Mm-hmm.
but we're also helping them with their needs spiritually.
Absolutely.
And so that physical need being met through food, it's that icebreaker, but it also resonates with the community that, hey, they're willing to, to help.
Right.
And so I think in a lot of ways it just opens the door.
Right. I think you look at that verse in James where it talks about, how can you walk by someone who's in need and do nothing for that?
Right.
I think it proves the genuineness of our faith. It's not only are we out there to share the gospel, but when I look at I remember one of the things you talked about in our interview we did, when Jesus looked on the crowds, it said he had compassion on them. And so when we look in someone's life or at someone's house and we introduce ourselves to them, and I see that there's issues or things that are going on, the Holy Spirit's what moves me. Yeah, I want you to know Jesus, but I also want to help bandage your wound, or I want to help, give you food, or I want to help give you clothes. And I think as believers that we should be wanting to meet needs like that. But like you said, the ultimate goal is we want to ultimately, hey, here's the gospel. This is what can, bring salvation into your life. And so, one of the things that was interesting in I'll never forget this. There's when you're doing ministry, and the longer you do ministry, you have things that happen that just you'll never forget. There's stories that have happened to me throughout this last 17 years that there's just certain ones that, like, I will never forget that. And I'll never forget one of the things that happened when we were out in your town. And I think you were actually with me. We were scouting out the neighborhood looking for projects. So when we came in to do the grill walk, the next day we were going to have some time to do projects. And I know we found a roof to do, and we found some other things. But I remember we drove by this one lady's trailer house. And, I mean, dude, the weeds were, 5 foot, 6 foot tall. And look, there's no way it looked like anyone lived there. And it was so bad that we were going to drive by, and we weren't going to go up there and see. And because in Longdale there are quite a few houses that are abandoned houses. And so, but when we drove by, I remember there was a flicker of a light we seen, and we're like, wait, there's someone actually may live there. So we stopped and we went up and we met the lady that was living there, and we told her what we were doing, and we wanted to go out there and help her with her yard and see if we could clean it up and bring some people in. And I just remember, like, she told us how she had got behind, and I don't remember the exact story, but she had lost her leg, and it was the reason she had got behind her yard, which makes sense, right? I mean, she had an accident. She only had one leg, so how's she going to get that back under? And as we told her, no, we want to help you, and she's like, yeah, okay, I could use some help. But she said, well, put me on the end of the list. Like, if there's other people that need it, help them first, she says, because I feel like I'm unworthy of you guys helping. And, like, that, like, punched me, like, in the gut so hard, because I just remember thinking about that lady sitting in that house every day, then Satan's whispering those lies in their ear. Hey, you're not worthy. You're unworthy. You're all these different things. You're worthless. And I think about the world that's out there, when they don't have the hope of the gospel, Satan is just whispering those lies in their ear. And as we got in there, and there's a verse in Thessalonians where it talks about, because of their faith in Jesus, it says that their faith was being reported all around the world. Like everyone was hearing about it. And we went in there, and I'm talking, dude, we like annihilated that house. I mean, it was it was golf course mode. It was awesome. Like, we killed it. And I mean, we took out all kinds, threw trash away, organized things. And I mean, she was just overwhelmed, right? And she worked if I remember right, at a casino. And later that night, we went to the casino to give out burgers, right? And when we went out there to ask permission, the people that were in there, they said, hey, are you guys the ones that came in and helped with whatever? I don't remember her name, but her house and helped clean. Like, she had been telling others
about it.
Yeah. And I think about like how that's the ripple effect of the gospel. Like when Longdale First Baptist moves out into a neighborhood or a trailer park or a nursing home, and they have compassion on people, like that trailer park tells others, and that one tells others, and this one and it tells people, and people start to hear like what God's done. And so it was one of the most encouraging stories I've ever remembered. And so and I think actually the roof that we didn't that couple end up coming to church?
I don't think that no, they were going to. They started going to the community church just down the road.
Right, that's right.
Yep. Yeah.
So so one of the ministries that you guys are really big into is your mission. Oh my gosh, dude, the mission trip to Africa. And so you just got back from that.
Yep.
And so why don't you kind of tell us what you guys what do you do? What do you do when you go there?
Well, we started going in 2016. My brother-in-law actually started going in 2014 and partnering with this group over there. And we've been going every year since, except 20 and 21 because COVID didn't allow it. The last 2 years we went, 22 and 23, we did conferences with pastors and stuff because they still had COVID restrictions. But this year was kind of getting back into what we really, our mission over there is planting churches. We're partnering with a pastor there, which is very important, to have somebody that you can trust, to follow through. I've always said I'm not going to go over somewhere to plant a church somewhere if the people don't have anybody to disciple them, when we leave.
Afterwards, right.
So he does that. He's kind of like a director of missions. In the Baptist circles, we have DOMs, director of missions, and he's kind of the pastor to pastors. And he'll take care of an association of churches, so it's kind of what Pastor Gift does. He oversees those churches and works with them in finding pastors or sending pastors to them. So that's very important that we have that groundwork that's there when we get there. But we go over and we stay off in the African bush in Zimbabwe, and no running water, no electricity,
no internet.
Oh,
Hayden, you're in trouble.
Yep.
Oh no.
Oh no, right? Can't watch Sister Wives no more.
Come on, man. You said you weren't going to talk about that out loud on the podcast.
Yeah. So we actually just go door to door. We do a presentation called Creation to Christ. The people over there in much of Africa are part of what's called African Traditional Religion, ATR, and it's kind of a really crazy, pray to your nearest dead relative. They make, I don't know, they intercede on your behalf for rain and for crops and for all kinds of things. But they do believe that God created everything. But they believe God created everything and left.
Right.
And so we start there with creation, that they believe in the Creator God, and we talk to them about how in the garden, Adam and Eve, the first man and woman, how they actually chose to leave God. That it was not God leaving, God running off and leaving us. And so we take them from that idea that God actually created us in His image and wanted us to have a relationship with Him, and vice versa. And then we, disobeyed him, and now we have sinful nature. But God, even from Genesis 3 at the fall of man, it says that, the seed of the woman will strike the serpent on the
Right.
head, and the serpent will strike the seed of the woman on the heel,
Mm-hmm.
but he will be victorious. It's the first gospel
Yeah.
presentation of the Bible. So from the beginning, God was orchestrating a relationship with us, a personal relationship with us. So we just walked them through that, from creation, through the law, through, all the way through to Jesus Christ fulfilling the law, his death, burial, and resurrection.
Right.
And so that's what we go door to door with. And then this year we did Vacation Bible School. By the end of the week, I think we had like 250 kids come into that.
Come on.
And we was doing simple stories with them, David and Goliath, Daniel
Right.
and Lion's Den, but taking all of that back to Christ and
Right.
dependency upon him. We always presented the gospel to the kids with the Evangel Cubes, if you've ever seen them.
Oh yeah, that's good.
At the end of each lesson.
Yeah.
And then we went, and each night in two separate places we had a revival setting where we preached the gospel. And then on Saturday, at each of those different plants, we had a service, and people are asked to join the church, and it's a big commitment over there to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and they sell it as a commitment, and they don't just ask you to come up front. They actually kind of dismiss everybody, and if you want to join the church, you come back.
Oh,
and
wow.
join the
Interesting.
church. And so it's a very big commitment. So, for instance, it's a big of a commitment at Garungway, where we planted a church. There was over 400 in attendance, but only 60 joined the church.
Wow, that's
that
still
day.
amazing.
It's amazing. Praise God.
Right.
And then at our other church plant was in Chishumba, in the Harungwe district of Zimbabwe, and 27 people joined that church. There was somewhere around 200 people in attendance. And then the last Sunday there, we had what's called a Big Sunday, where the churches that have been planted over the years, they all come together into this property that has been acquired over there, where we're trying to get an orphanage settled and a place for kids that don't have parents can come in, and Pastor Gift is going to be basically, him and his wife going to be their mom and dad, take care of them.
Right.
So we're working towards that. We have our bathrooms built right now. We're moving towards building a house for a Gift and the kids that'll be
Man.
living there. And then we have enough property to build some other huts around to house kids. And we're going to try to get a water well drilled so they can irrigate.
Yeah.
And they can grow food year round in Zimbabwe. So they can provide for themselves
Right.
through gardening and stuff like that. And so we had a big Sunday there, where all the churches that we planted over the years, they all kind of came together, and we
Amen.
got to reunite with some of the people that we seen back in 2016.
Wow.
And just worship with them. We had Lord's Supper with them. It's pretty cool.
That's cool.
And and then we came home.
So do they use grape juice or wine?
They did use wine, but they diluted it.
Mm.
They diluted it with the raspberry juice. I really don't know why they was using wine, because it was like 99% raspberry juice.
Interesting. I don't.
But-
If I ever had raspberry juice,
No,
I don't know if I
Me
ever
neither.
had that.
me neither.
I do like raspberries though.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
I haven't had it.
Hey, so tell us a story. I mean, obviously we could. Honestly, me and Lucas could probably talk for 5 hours if we just and we could just keep on going with so many. And we ain't even gotten to the Bible yet. I mean, so you met one of the guys there about his son. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tell that.
Well, we was at a house, and I had Anna and Beth Berry with us, and they shared their testimony and creation to Christ. And then we follow up with, do you have any questions about what we just shared with you? And the young man, it was a young man, his wife, and their kid was, 3-year-old kid was there, and he started talking to our translator, which is Pastor Gift, and he talked for quite a while, and then finally Gift turned around to translate what's going on, because they're speaking in Shona. We don't have any idea what they're talking about, except when they say Jesu, so we know that's Jesus. But other than that, I don't know
Jesu.
what you're saying,
I like that.
So anyways, Gift turns around. We're sitting in this kitchen of a hut, and the door's open, and he says, this young man was just sharing with me that he said outside there's a tree there. There's a bicycle leaned against it. I said, yeah, I see it. He said this time last year, his 7-year-old son was bitten by a snake, and within 2 hours he was gone. You know, he passed away. And in their culture, they nobody dies. It doesn't matter how old you are. Nobody dies without reason. Somebody sinned.
Right.
So they have kind of like witch doctors. I don't really know what, you know, it's kind of the interpretation we get, but it's basically mediums and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really pushed to go and talk to these witch doctors and ask them why his son died, because, you know, somebody in his family sinned and some more people are going to die and all this kind of stuff. And he said he didn't do that because he didn't feel right about that. And he said, you know, his statement was, God's will is God's will. Even though he was very burdened by what had happened to his son,
Right.
he refused to go to these people, but he did try to seek out God.
Right.
And he was been trying to find understanding for this past year, and he's going to these different churches, but he said that everywhere he went, it was not. He said he just knew it wasn't right. And so he's been searching, and he was basically telling us that he believed that God sent us to him because he said, today, he said, I've heard your presentation and your story, and he says, today I have the comfort that I have been looking for.
Come on.
This whole time.
Right.
And so I ended up sharing with him the story about David praying for his son, and his son ended up dying.
Oh, yeah.
And walked him through the idea that David said that he wasn't mourning anymore. When his servants asked him why he wasn't mourning, he said, because my son is with God, and I will be with God, and I'll be with my son again someday. And, you know, his son was a young man, you know. He wouldn't know, you know, he wouldn't have been held accountable, I wouldn't imagine, at that point. But
Right.
So anyways, I just shared with him that, and then we followed through with, salvation, and, you know, if that's something he wanted to commit his life to Christ, Romans Road, and he committed his life to Christ. He was at church each night. We was having a revival, and he's one of those 60 that joined the church, him and his family, that, you know, that Saturday where we had the service. So, you know.
So that reminded me of a verse, what you said. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 1. It's in verse 3. It says, praise be to God, the Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves have received from God.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, when we take the gospel, we're not taking knowledge in there. We're taking Christ living in us into a hut or a village or an apartment. We're taking that into this person's life that could be a disaster. It could be depression. It could be an addiction. And in the midst of the worst things that could happen, I mean, someone losing a kid or whatever that is, I mean, God is a guy that's able to look into that situation and say, hey, that guy needs to be reminded I love him, or that guy needs comforted, he needs healing. And God sends people like you. And you know, when you think about that story with Peter in Acts, when Cornelius, it said that he was a God-fearing man that gave to the poor. And I believe, you know, the Bible says when we ask, seek, and knock, it'll be given to us. And so when we seek wisdom, we seek understanding, it'll be found. And, you know, Cornelius was this guy that was looking. He was looking for something, right? And then God knew it, and he sends Peter that's on this rooftop, right, with a dream. Remember that story?
Yep.
And Peter shows up, and boom, salvation comes. And I think so often, you know, when we go, and American church is the worst at this, because we want numbers, or we want statistics, or we want to see results. And it's like, what if for 10 years we were just going because we were doing what God told us to do. He told us to go, so like we should go. And in the midst of going, there's someone that God's going to connect us with. It may not be this month, it may not be this outreach, it may not be whatever, but we can't give up because I didn't see one salvation, or I didn't. It's like, no, God told us to keep on going. It's at that right moment when God sees this guy that's ready to surrender, and you walk through the door from a guy from Longdale, Oklahoma,
Right.
that no one knows where it's at, to a place in Africa, and he connects these two complete strangers, and you bring with you Jesus and says, here's what can fix it, right? And I love it, man. It's an amazing, and I've heard so many more stories about Africa that just, I mean, it's mind-boggling, dude.
Yeah.
What would you say? Obviously, you've done a lot of ministry in the States. What would you see the biggest difference in doing ministry stateside versus ministry in a different country?
There's a level of innocence still attached in those people over there. Knowledge is a good thing, but it's also a detriment, you know.
Yeah.
And they're very spiritual people over there. They're very much seekers. You know, they're seeking truth, understanding, which is good. The difference there and here is that they don't have a bunch of convoluted ideas mixing that up as much as we do. I had somebody tell me one time that, you know, they have all of the furniture in their mind, so to speak, but it needs to be rearranged. In America, we got all the wrong furnishings, so we got to go in, we got to clean house, and we got to put new furnishings in, and we had to arrange them.
Oh wow, yeah, that's good. That's good.
So, in the States, there's, you know, here's a people in Zimbabwe that have nothing. I mean, literally, they're, you know, we go over there in the wintertime, they don't even really have anything to do except go draw water, cook food, sleep. You know, I mean,
Right.
There's nothing to do. They don't have TV, they don't have internet. You know, they have a lot of time to contemplate life.
Right.
And, you know, they have plenty of time for people, to be around people, to talk. They're very open to spending time with people. It's very important to them. They have a saying over there that Americans have all the watches, but the Zimbabweans have all the time.
That's a good one. I like that.
Funny.
So, but they're all down. When I take a team over there, one of the things I talk to them about, don't go over there and think that these people are missing something.
Right.
Because they don't have heat and air, they don't have running water,
Right.
they don't have cars, they don't have TV. I mean, really, when you stop and think about what are they missing, they're missing the things that we would probably have some benefit if we didn't have at least as much of them.
Right.
And
It's like Eddie's testimony. Remember in the landfill? That's good.
you know, so I tell people don't look at what they're missing. Actually, let's go over there and see what they have that we don't.
Yeah, that's good.
Because they actually do have something that we don't, you know, and they do have time. They do have open hearts.
Right.
You know, they're not closed-minded. And in the States, we're just so preoccupied. We're so proud as Americans, understandably, you know, for what freedoms we have and things like that. But we're so proud of what we have, and all we do is strive for the next thing, you know. So we work. Oh, I want to buy this, and then we work, and buy this, and we don't really have time to enjoy life. And you're kind of front porch sitting, you know. I mean, just enjoying one another, and we also have so much fantasy here. I think it kind of affects people's ability to step into the supernatural conversation of who Jesus Christ is, because he's a supernatural being, right?
Right.
We got Iron Man, we got Superman, we got Spider-Man, we got Avengers. Come on.
Right.
You know, we've got Santa Claus, you know.
Right. I think Hayden's got a bedspread with that on it.
He probably does.
Yeah.
You know, I was gonna say I don't want to offend anybody by talking about Santa Claus, but for goodness sakes, man, it's like
It's okay.
it's a huge lie.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and we tell our children, let's believe in this, and you participate in this situation,
Right.
and tell them that he's real. And then when the kids figure out that he's not, you still try to convince them that he is.
Right.
And then eventually they get big enough to realize that he isn't. But you're still telling him, well, but God's still real.
Right.
Santa Claus isn't, but God still is. And so
It's just confusing.
So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, whenever I'm going over there and I'm seeing their readiness to receive the gospel, is because they're actually searching for that. they definitely believe in God. They definitely believe in the supernatural. They're definitely spiritually minded.
Right.
But over here, we're just secular.
Right.
You know, and we're going to make it on our own and do it our own way. And I ain't going to believe in this nonsense, mythical fairy tale stuff. You know, I quit believing in that when I quit believing in Santa Claus.
Right.
And so we do have a lot that has created, you know, that furniture concept. There's so many things that are in our minds
Right.
that are hindering us from being receptive.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a miracle when somebody accepts Christ in Zimbabwe. You know, it's a bigger miracle, I think,
Oh,
than somebody in the States.
Dude, I get
receives Christ.
super jacked when the
Right.
States happen.
Right. So, you know, that's the difference, I guess. And I don't know if I really answered
That's
your
good,
question
dude.
or not. But.
So so Old Testament, Moses warns Israel that when they go into the Promised Land, they're going to start to worship these
Bales and
all these things, the milk, the honey, all the blessings that they're going to receive from what God's about to bless them with.
Yeah.
Eventually, they're going to turn their back on him. And I mean, if you read the Old Testament, it happens, I don't know, 10,000 times. I mean, it's like almost monotonous. It's like, okay, yeah, good guy, bad guy, good guy, bad guy. I mean, it's like generation. Did you learn the last generation just, you know, and it kind of goes back and forth, judges and all those things. And it's like this vicious cycle. And I think we see, like in America, we definitely have become a culture of worshiping the created things versus the Creator. That's like Romans 1 that you're talking about type there. So how in the world in the 21st century, and the churches in America, how do we break out of that? How do we get out of this?
I mean, I don't know. You know that there's plenty of Christians inside of the States. You know that have plenty that have an abundance of possession. You know, but you know, revival, spiritual awakening, prayer. You know, I mean. I think the church, you know, the concept of Forgotten Ministries, church has left the building. We're going to have to get out there to people, because the young man that was seeking God and trying to figure out, you know, some kind of comfort and understanding of why his son is gone.
Right.
He was seeking without finding for a year.
Right. That's good.
You know, but then God sent a messenger to him.
Right.
It just happens to be that I got to be that guy.
Right.
Praise be to God. You know, I didn't.
Right. Yeah.
Just
Absolutely.
walked into his house. You know,
Totally.
and told him the story that we practice over and over to make sure that we're including everything that needs to be included. And
Right.
you know, and I'm sitting here going, how did that presentation help you cope with losing your son, for goodness
Right.
sakes, you know? And then I have to think through that, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, we did say that God loved us so much he gave up his son.
Oh yeah.
You
That's
know,
interesting.
so he may have attached to that. Whatever happened doesn't really matter. What happened was Holy Spirit overcame him and
Right.
comforted him, and he came to Christ. How many people are in the States that are confused? So we had some conversation while we was in Zimbabwe, you know, about, you know, taking this message, you know, at home, you know, and how can we do it? Well, we really just need to sit down and try to figure out some type of gospel conversation. See, people had studied the people of Africa, studied their culture, and they built creation to Christ around ministering to them specifically.
That's interesting, yeah.
Because they decided, well, this is where the people are. Let's start where they're
Right.
at with the concept of Philip and the Ethiopian.
Right.
He's driving down the road, and, you know, he's reading from Isaiah 53, the
Yeah.
suffering servant, and, you know, and then the question ends up coming up, you know what you're reading? How am I supposed to know unless somebody tells me? Well, let's talk about it. So the scripture says that Philip started where he was
Yeah.
and took him to Christ, you know. And
Right.
he was already at Christ, but he started where he was. It's
Yeah.
the concept that's introduced there.
That's good.
And so we start where the Zimbabweans are. They believe in God. That's it. Okay, so let's start there. Let's tell them more about this God that they actually already believe in. In the States, I think it's going to be a more emotionally driven conversation, because we're less spiritual, but we're highly emotional.
Oh yeah.
You know?
Oh, believe me. Yeah.
I don't think we need to make an emotional pitch to receive Christ, but we're going to have to come at people from, how are you feeling?
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that way? Do you not want to feel that way any longer? You know, somehow or another talk about their feelings, but take them from their feelings to Christ.
Right.
That gives them something that helps them wrestle with what they're feeling. You
Right.
know,
And
some truth.
I mean, I think, Hayden, you see that with all the areas we go into. I mean, America is like a melting pot. So it's not like you're getting, you know, you're not, this door may be someone, the doors that we're going to, not everyone's from this tribe or this culture. I mean, we could go to a door that's someone from Asia. We could go someone from Africa to someone from, I mean, dude, you never know, right? I mean, you never know what you're going to get when you get to the door. And I think, you know, it's really, you have to be listening. The Holy Spirit's going to have to guide you. But I like the ideal of like finding out where they're at and starting with that.
Yeah, and it makes sense what you said about America, because I mean, across the board, you know, you have, like you said, a melting pot, but you've also got the kids that are here for generation after generation, and then the American entertainment and consumerism idea comes in.
Yeah.
And so that's why you've got to appeal to the feelings, because yeah, after you've had everything in the world to have and it leaves you feeling short, okay, well then let's talk about it.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
And so yeah, I think, yeah, there's going to be specific moments where you have to come from where someone's at from a specific standpoint, but you can also almost just generalize the American culture as one thing of they
Right.
got all this stuff and they don't.
I think that's a good point, because we go over there, they have nothing, but they're the happiest people I've ever met in my life.
Yeah.
Very joyful, very thoughtful, very inviting, you know. But you come over here and we got everything.
Yeah.
The poorest person in our country. I mean, the
Yeah.
absolute poorest person in our country has more than what most of the people over there have,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then the problem that adds on to it is the neighbor has something more.
right?
And so you've got
Right.
this thing where it's like,
There's no fulfillment in it.
yeah, and you're
Right.
thrown the American dream of like, oh, well, the world's yours, go take it, blah, blah, you'll get riches and all this stuff. And so there's this never-ending cycle. Like, I used to get mad at these professional sports players when they come out with all these mental illnesses or they'd be depressed. And I'd be like, you have everything in the world. Why are you mad or
Right.
sad or depressed or whatever? And it just comes down to the fact that, yes, someone else has something more than them. They've been fed the American dream, or the thing that they've thought was going to fix their whole life
Right.
didn't do it.
Right.
Well, that's it. Takes you back to that verse that you mentioned earlier, that when Christ looked over to the crowds, it says that he had compassion for them because they were distressed and dispirited.
Right.
You know, and so there's an emotional longing. You know, it was a spiritual thing. You know, they were suffering from depression, they were suffering from doubt, confusion.
Right.
You know, people in Zimbabwe are suffering from those things, and people in America are suffering from
Right.
those things. We're just they're just in two different parts of the world, two different cultures. You
Right.
know, so if we're going to make a dent, I mean, okay, I can say, yeah, scripturally, he was talking about the Israelites. They repented and came back to the Lord whenever they suffered.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I was talking to, can't remember, I heard this somewhere, that there was a pastor who went to do missions in Cuba. He's doing missions over there. He's telling the pastor in Cuba that he's praying that the persecution of the Christians would stop. And the pastor in Cuba says, don't pray that. The church is growing now more than it ever has.
Because of the persecution.
And then the pastor said, we're praying for the church in the States, for Christians in the States, that they'd be persecuted so they would return to Christ.
Wow.
So he told them. And
Yeah,
I was
put that
like,
on a billboard.
Whoa.
I know.
You know, so that's the format we do see in Bible. You know,
Oh, yeah,
dude. And the concept is, if someone's suffering from addiction, they got to hit rock bottom, man.
Right.
Till they hit rock bottom, they ain't never going to come up out of that.
Right.
We're always willing to say that about somebody else, but you know,
Right.
when we start talking about the church, you know, so there's an extreme nature conversation there. The extreme side is, I don't know, maybe we need to suffer a little more as a church, and then we'll repent. The other thing is, to me, the simpler approach is the church just needs to be the church,
Right.
and we need to be there for people, and all people, no matter whether you're from Zimbabwe or you're from Longdale, Oklahoma, everybody is confused. everybody is lost.
Yeah.
The whole definition of lostness is darkness, is the absence of God, the presence of God. And so we're all needing that.
Yeah.
And the light has come into the world. The church needs to shine the light in darkness.
Absolutely.
And that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
But the church doesn't do that because most of the time we just have our Sunday morning service, our PM service, our Wednesday service, and we're satisfied with that, you know.
Right.
I give to the church, you know. I donate money. I mean,
I get it. Believe me,
we
dude.
got more than that.
I know.
So-
I know, and you know, it's frustrating to me because I'm like, dude, when are we going to realize that that's not working? The world's getting worse, so the church has got to maybe do something different. I mean, when are we going to ask that question? And I do think it's interesting. We met a guy in Tulsa, and he ran a men's transitional program, and he had tons around the world. Like, I don't remember, it was like hundreds of transitional men's programs around the world. And I was like, really? And it was really interesting. And I said, well, what's the difference in like a guy coming to the transitional program like here in Tulsa versus like in the one that he had in Africa? And he said, let me give you a story. And he said, I had a kid come up to me the other day that wanted to enter our transitional program. And he said he had lost everything and he was ready to turn his life around. And the guy looked at him and said, no, you haven't lost everything. And the kid looked at him and he said, yeah, I have. He says, no, you haven't. Well, you know how much those shoes you got on your feet are worth? And he had a pair of it was like $150 pair of dollar shoes. And he said, what about that watch on your wrist? And what about that hat you got on your head? And he went through the different things that this guy had in the States and the fact that he still had hundreds of dollars worth of clothes on him and he hadn't lost everything. He says, you know, when someone comes to us in Africa and they say they lost everything, that means they've been like kicked out of their tribe, their family. No one has anything to do with them. They don't have food. They don't have clothes. They literally have lost everything. And their success rate for the guys in those countries is like 99%.
Oh, I bet.
And the States is like 20%. And you're right. I think, you know, you said, what's it going to take to wake us up? It's a revival. And I agree. But I think what comes before the revival is something that I don't know if we're all ready for. I mean, think about that. And I mean, to think of a culture or generation that has to suffer, that has everything, I don't know how, I don't know. I mean, I hate to say that's in our lifetime, but it's starting to look more and more like that as we see things kind of unfold.
And the problem is the church really can't see it because it's un-American. If it was an American value, then maybe the American church would understand, but it's hard for them to see that.
Right. Well, just the thought of us not being number one, right? We take pride in America's the greatest country ever, and to have something catastrophic happen or something that's like humbling. I mean, we obviously read the Old Testaments. God moved against nations in a insane way.
In Zimbabwe, their theme this year was Ephesians 2:19, was kingdom citizens.
Oh yeah.
And so I preached a sermon when I first got there, kingdom citizens, Ephesians 2:19. The way I opened it was that I said, before we talk about citizenship in the kingdom of God, let's talk about what this citizenship means. So I talked about being a Roman citizen. Roman Empire, I try to look up and see how long it spans. Some people are like 700 years to 2,000 years, so I guess there's no consensus there.
Right.
Anyways,
Somewhere in that area.
Let's say 1,000 years or whatever. But regardless, when Rome was an empire, to be a Roman citizen meant everything.
Right.
I mean, it got you out of a bind. If you was fixed to be beheaded, you know, I'm a Roman citizen. They're going to stop. You got to, because you can't just kill a Roman citizen. You had to go toward it to be on trial. It meant a lot.
Right. Yeah.
But guess what? It doesn't exist anymore. The Roman Empire don't exist anymore. We have the influence of Rome. We have the invention of concrete, I guess. You know, we have a lot of Roman buildings that still stand. You know, I mean, we have a lot of the culture that's here. The United States based a lot of our founding principles from the Senate and different things that were going on in the Roman government.
Mm-hmm.
But it's gone.
Right.
And then I heard the other day that if you put the history of the world into a movie format that lasted 365 days, a movie that lasted 365 days, started on January 1st and ran through December 31st, that the United States would show up on the screen the last 3 seconds
Oh, wow.
of the film or something like that.
Oh, that's a trip.
That was kind of weird.
Yeah.
It was 3 seconds or 3 minutes. That's when
Interesting.
America would show up on the screen. So here we are. You're talking about America just a second ago. I'm an American. Beat my chest, hear me roar.
Yeah.
I'm proud to be an American. I'm very happy that I'm American.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm in Zimbabwe, there's been a few times where I was like, I'm an American. You gonna let me leave your country? You know? And
Right.
they were like, you can't leave. You don't have vaccines. And I said, well, I'm an American. I'm leaving.
Right.
And you know, and they take my passport. They come back and they say, you're the only country in the world that can enter Zimbabwe without a vaccine.
Wow.
Here's your passport. Here's your ticket. You can go home. I'm glad to be an American.
Right.
I'm privileged to be an American, to exercise the freedom that I have.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. Is America going to exist in 1,000 years? I don't know.
Right.
But I know this. Even if it exists throughout my lifetime, right? I'm going to die one day, and my citizenship in the United States is not going to matter anymore. Roman citizenship doesn't matter.
Right.
And American citizenship isn't going to matter one iota. Whenever you're dead and you leave this place, our citizenship in the kingdom of God is what really
Yeah, absolutely.
matters, you know. Anyways, I brought that up because we're sitting here talking about, you know, the American, you know, Israel, whenever they have so much, and then it takes them losing everything before they're repenting, you know. Here's my thing. I don't want to see America lose everything, but if it does, it does.
Right.
But I know this, whenever we die, it doesn't matter what your citizenship is.
Yeah.
It needs to be settled in
Absolutely.
the kingdom of God. So I don't know what the solution is for America, but I do know that the way that we get there is one step at a time, just the same way that Israelites moved away from God, the same way the United States collectively has moved, you know, away from God anywhere.
Right.
We've got to start going back.
Right.
And the way we do that is one salvation at a time. The old
Amen.
story about the guy who's on the beach and there's them starfish everywhere, and he's picking one up and throwing it back in. You ever heard that?
Yeah, that's good, dude. I've
Picking
never
one
heard
up,
that.
He's throwing it back in, and they're everywhere. There's thousands of them on the beach, washed up on the beach by the tide. And somebody walks up to him and says, "What are you doing?" He says, "I'm throwing them back in the water so they don't die."
That's good,
He
dude.
said, "What's the point? They're everywhere." And he picked one up and he threw it in the water. And he said, "Matters to that one." You know?
That's true.
So salvation
That's good, dude.
is the answer. Jesus is the answer. But how do we get back?
Right.
How do we heal, as a nation or as
Yeah.
churches?
Right.
Well, it's going to take the church being the church,
Absolutely.
bringing people to Christ. I preach at our congregation at Longdale that I'm not the one that's supposed to do that all by myself.
Yeah, amen to that.
Everybody has to do that at their place of employment, at their home, at the ball games.
Yeah.
We have to be purposeful as Christians, but Christians are so scared of hurting people's feelings
Yeah.
that we won't talk to them about who Jesus is. But it's the thing. It's the citizenship that is going to matter for eternity,
Right.
not their feelings.
Yeah.
And so one salvation at a time. That's how we come back.
Right. Doesn't a starfish, when you pick up a starfish, doesn't one of its tentacles die, the one you touch? Have you ever heard that?
Jerry, you're getting to this is past.
Now what he's taking this down the seed idea that you plant a seed, the seed has to die before it can.
Well, I was just thinking
germinate.
about,
So he's-
we're scared of hurting people's feelings, but, even if that leg dies on a little starfish, he's still excited he's back in the ocean.
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
and that's, and
I mean, I have a hand, but at least I'm,
if there's any ocean
Marine biologist.
there you go, marine biologists out there, that doesn't happen with starfish. Sorry, totally. I
Pretty
thought
sure you're thinking of like a gecko or something, because I know those tails
Oh, it
fall
does
apart.
fail. I'm going to look up starfish tonight. We're going to talk about that next
I'm
podcast.
gonna pull it up right now.
It's gonna be about starfish.
You know what's funny is I'm going to look it up, record it on the screen. I'm going to pull up whether you're right or wrong.
There you go. Hey, so Lucas, you guys, do you guys do online sermons?
Yeah, we do Facebook and YouTube.
Where could they find those if they want to come listen to you guys on Sunday?
Tickets. I think it's FBC Longdale, man.
I think you guys just got internet in Longdale like about 30 days
Yeah,
ago.
it's been it's all new stuff to us.
They just got done. I think they just got rid of the. What was it called?
No,
the
they
Pony
used to have that
Express?
guy. They used to have that guy that like ran in the hamster wheel that powered electricity, and I thought that did the internet too.
First Baptist Church of Longdale. That's
Okay.
our Facebook.
Okay.
I don't know what our YouTube is.
Okay. Well, Hayden could put that on there. Can you do that?
Yeah, I'll put
Okay,
it on.
cool. Hey, just real quick before we close, Hayden, if people are wanting to watch the podcast again, how do they do that? Because I had some people ask me. Can you please explain?
You just go onto YouTube, and you know what? Because I'm so nice, I will just screen record and do a little screen recording at the end for them to look at on how to get to it.
Okay, and so then once they go to it, do they have to push something like it, or what do you do? Can
Yeah, there's a little button that says subscribe on it, and when you click it, you it's following, so
Oh.
you follow us, and then
people will it'll update every time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how you do that. So we will absolutely have Lucas on again. Again, we could talk for hours about more and more things. We didn't get into all of this. I wanted to jump. I was about to get you on some of that, but we'll get you next time. So anyways, we love working with Longdale First Baptist Church. They're an absolute blessing. There's all kinds of things. I could go on for days, but
Yeah.
we'll definitely have Lucas back, and then we'll do podcast next week. I'm not sure who we got in it next week. Maybe the pastor from
surprise.
maybe Mississippi. So we'll kind of see how that works out and kind of go
Yeah,
from there. Hey,
we'll go on
you didn't get to talk much this time. I feel like, were you scared or shy or?
He just won't stop. I'm just kidding. No,
It's-
it was good. It was good to listen. I didn't feel like there was a time for me to interject until towards the second half. So
So you're sitting with the elders and you're just absorbing.
in Proverbs
wisdom.
13:20, dude, says to walk with the wise and you'll become wise.
Hey, there you go,
What
man.
happened to you, buddy?
I haven't walked with you guys long enough.
All right, thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next week.
Yeah.
Later.